help women save lives and peacefully end abortion where you live.
I can tell you exactly what would happen. The infant would be delivered. The infant would be kept comfortable. The infant would be resuscitated if that's what the mother and the family desired.
You were serious about that?
Be inspired to change hearts and minds by joining over 1 million volunteers taking part in the global movement happening in your neighborhood.
She says, pray that I can get through this abortion. And I said, oh, no. So she went ahead and went into the abortion clinic. When she just came out, she told us, I'm not going to get the abortion. We just had a baby saved. But we had a baby saved in Memphis today. Praise the Lord.
This is the 40 Days for Life podcast with your host, Sean Carney.
Hello, and thank you for joining us today on the 40 Days for Life podcast. I'm Sean Carney, the president of 40 Days for Life, and your host for this podcast, which is dedicated to helping you end abortion where you live. And this is the week that will pass the Roe v. Wade anniversary. Roe v. Wade is dead, by the way. Thank God Dobbs overturned it in 2022, but you'll still have a lot of marches going on throughout the rest of the country as we mourn all those lost to abortion and resolve to never quit fighting for those who are in the womb. And so today we're going to discuss an apologetic topic that will come up, as the Roe anniversary comes and goes. There's a lot of media coverage and stories on it. So we want to equip you to discuss why Roe was never viable. And we're very proud of that title. So joining me on this podcast, somebody that I'm extremely proud of and who is definitely viable, is Mr. Steve Carlin. I really got you with that one.
Yeah, remember when we had people saying we need to introduce Heather before me? If you're going to catch me off guard like that, I need a little more prep time. So Heather's here.
Heather's here. You get the worst introductions just because
viable.
we're saving I'm viable. Oh, my word. Okay, so this podcast is coming out on January the 21st. The official anniversary is January the 22nd. The inauguration is January 20th. So if you're listening to this, there's a new sheriff in town. He's very good looking, actually. You're going to be very happy. So this weekend is the March for Life. They're all kind of crammed together. March for Life, West Coast Walk for Life. We'll be traveling, and I know I'll be in D.C. this week, and it's just been crazy. We're pre-recording this, obviously, because it's a very, very busy time. But the theme of Roe v. Wade, or at least for what we saw for the election, is we need to go back to Roe. We need to reinstate Roe. And what we know is that Roe, was never viable.
A total disaster, as the new president might say.
A total disaster. It was awful. It was terrible. It was an abomination. And one of the things that we've said many times is Ginsburg said it was bad law. I like how Alito this is actually a good time if you haven't read the Dobbs decision opinion. Egregiously decided. Roe was egregiously decided. Alito really beat it up. This is a good time to read that because what happens is you get in conversations this week and the next few weeks. It's awful they overturned Roe. We need Roe back. Oh, wow, that sounds terrible. So what was Roe? Well, it allowed abortion. Well, when? I don't know.
Why?
And just who was on the Supreme Court when they gave us Roe? How many people voted for Roe? All those questions of going on offense, because what we learn is that it's really dumb for the abortion advocates to say we should go back to Roe because Roe was bad law, as Ginsburg said. The smart Democrats say, well, we're going to create a new federal abortion law that's going to force everybody to get abortions. And so
Roe didn't go far enough, so why would we go back
far enough
for that?
Yeah. But Roe is dead and it's never coming back.
I like that.
Yeah, it's never coming back. And I think the whole point of this is it was destined to die. It took almost 5 decades. That's tragic. But this was never going to be a perpetual and eternal decision because there were too many contradictions in it inherently.
I have nothing to add.
Thank you. More of that, please. First and most obviously, there was no right to abortion in the Constitution. Former National Review Institute fellow Kevin Williamson said the Founding Fathers knew where babies come from. If they had wanted to put something in the National Charter related to pregnancy, they could have done so.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty simple. This is where we get into the Roe decision. It was in the shadows and the penumbras of some amendment. Due process clause.
This is a little bit like, well, abortion's not in the Bible, so we can do whatever we want.
That's exactly what I was just thinking. Where it says somewhere in there. It's implied heavily.
Xbox isn't in the Bible, so we can do whatever we want. I mean, it's all Ferraris, just whatever, fill in the blank. And it's like, it's so dumb. So
this is actually opposite though, because abortion wasn't in the Bible. If abortion wasn't in the Constitution, then you'd be free to have laws protecting unborn children. But here they're saying that it's not in there, therefore it must be in there.
That's true. That's a good analogy, because it's not in there, therefore it must be in there.
There's another great line. This is a longtime Los Angeles Times legal writer, David G. Savage, who noted that Justice Harry Blackmun, who wrote the opinion in Roe, surveyed centuries worth of abortion opinions held by Persians, Greeks, Romans, and the English, but he, quote, did not quote a provision in the Constitution that protected abortion rights. So he's looking at laws of every other country and society that he can think of, but it's not there in our Constitution.
But they're saying it's not argued for, it's assumed.
Yes, with this right to privacy.
Yeah.
So that's interesting too, because there's no right to privacy in the Constitution either. And the abortion advocates that you talk to on the street or at Thanksgiving dinner, but it's a right to privacy. I mean, privacy sounds nice, doesn't it? Blackmun knew this. He acknowledged it. In the Roe decision, Justice Blackmun said the Constitution does not explicitly mention any right of privacy. And then
they base the ruling on the right to privacy.
Yeah.
This is a big what to say when to plug, because, and if you haven't gotten the book, get the book, especially this year. If you haven't read it already, it's a good little pro-life New Year's resolution. Are we still doing New Year's resolutions? This is January 21st. When does that cut off?
Significantly declined for a lot of people by now, no doubt.
There's a Seinfeld where... Where is Seinfeld in the Bible? There's a Seinfeld where Elaine... she comes into his apartment. She's like, I got a Happy New Year today.
Oh, yeah.
She's like,
how long is it?
It's February 5th.
Yeah.
And Jerry's like, huh. Like, just kind of gives away. But, yeah, I don't know how long the New Year's resolutions. Can you make a New Year's resolution this late in the year?
Oh, you could always make a New Year's resolution.
The call to conversion is constant.
Yes, exactly.
No, it's way too late.
I'm talking about, I'm talking about the superficial New Year's resolutions, not like, hey.
I think you get a week. 1 week, and that's it.
What does that mean?
I mean, a week to determine what your New Year's resolution is.
When does the week start? So here, okay, so as you know, my wife and I, our anniversary is on January 2nd. So to me, Christmas break doesn't like stop at 10 o'clock at night on New Year's Day, which it did before I got married. So I extend it to the 2nd. So are you saying I get 7 days starting on the 3rd?
No, you get on January 8th, it is too late to say Happy New Year or to wish.
Okay, so it starts on the 1st for everybody. What about these people that go on like ski trips starting on New Year's Day? Like a lot of people take off the first week of the year. I've never done that. I think that would actually drive me nuts. But it's a big vacation time because people are off, kids are home from college. It makes sense. I'm sure we'll do it at some point as our kids get older. But like there's a lot of people that like leave on the 2nd of January and go skiing for a week. You're saying they have to make their New Year's resolution on vacation?
You know when January 1st is coming. Everybody can see it coming. Like,
no mercy.
If you're going to lose weight, but you're on vacation, so you're going to have the steak at the ski lodge, that's your business. It's between you and your God.
Steak is good for you. Let's do something better, like enchiladas or something.
Yeah, okay.
Food.
But then give them up when you come back. But like you don't hit like February and like I'm still thinking about it.
That's when they become your Lenten resolution.
Yeah.
Done that before.
Everybody wakes up like January 3rd and they're like, I need Ash Wednesday to get here. even though it's Christmas season and supposedly everybody's still celebrating Christmas.
You're gonna start doing push-ups for Lent? That's a weird one. Going to the gym? I'm not saying it was an expired New Year's resolution. I'm not saying it wasn't.
Did you see how we treated him and he came off as this huge expert at New Year's resolutions just now?
Yeah, he had a date and everything.
January 3rd at 10 p.m. No good.
Yeah, I didn't know January 8th was too late to say Happy New Year. I wonder how late I've ever said it.
However, with all of your nonsense stated already, if somebody wants to make a pro-life resolution because it's the Roe v. Wade anniversary, it is not too late. And I'm trying to sell our stupid book. So if you'd be quiet, we could sell some books.
I've always thought New Year's resolutions up until July 4th were perfectly fine.
Okay. Those are
America.
Those are 4th of July patriotic resolutions.
I mean, it's a dawning of something new, freedom on this continent.
Yeah, absolutely.
Boy, did we get off topic.
We got way off topic, and then you reminded me, man, I really enjoyed our 4th of July podcast. That was fun. And you know what? Frankly, it's your enthusiasm that matches my enthusiasm for the 4th of July, because we love us some 4th of July.
We sure do. And it's very cold in Wisconsin right now.
Yeah, sorry.
We're far away from the 4th of July in more ways than one.
We're about 6 weeks from it being really
Back to Blackman's admission.
Sorry, Blackman.
Right to privacy.
I love Justice Alito. He called this out in the Dobbs decision. Roe's message seemed to be that the abortion right could be found somewhere in the Constitution. ... Specifying its exact location was not of paramount importance.
Oh, snap.
I love it.
Owned. Somebody call a burn unit.
What I was going to say before the long rant was the what to say when point is, so what do I say when they're like, bring Roe back?
Yeah.
Well, why did they overturn Roe? Because Alito is a bigot and Kavanaugh is a drunk rapist.
Patriarchy.
Yeah, but like, what was the, okay, maybe that's the case. What was the reason that they didn't say that about Kavanaugh in the opinion? What was the reason they put in the opinion? And they're like, I don't know, I haven't read it. And they said, well, they said it's unconstitutional, that abortion is not in the Constitution, the right to privacy is not in the Constitution. That's what they said, which was the easiest overturning ever. And they're like, well, it is.
It should be.
And so then you say, if we continue the what to say when path, okay, well then, if it's in the Constitution and these angry old white males, plus Justice Thomas and Amy Coney Barrett, if they said it's in the Constitution, it's not, then surely the liberal justices obviously cited where abortion was in the Constitution. Did they do that in their dissent?
In the dissent,
and the answer is no.
No, and it goes even further because both Roe and its successor case, Casey, both of them affirmed a right to abortion before fetal viability, which A, is never workable in the first place. But if abortion isn't in the Constitution and privacy is not in the Constitution, I'm pretty doggone sure viability is not in the Constitution. They're just making this up.
Yeah, no, it's totally true. Viability is a joke to me. I think it's absurd that we have allowed it as a movement to gain traction whatsoever. No child is viable. My 10-year-old's not viable. I mean, he leaves his stuff out all the time. He could not survive without us.
I love when parents say my 18-year-old's not viable.
Oh, I have college buddies that aren't viable, living on your own if that's what's required. But what a harsh standard. You need to be able to live without your mom in order to be worthy amongst us. And that is a joke you say to your college buddy who's lazy or failing out. But you don't say it to a baby.
Yeah, that's an interesting point because one of the things, we've got this false virtue in America, not of kindness, but of niceness. I'm in the Midwest. We've got Midwest nice. We've got Minnesota nice.
Oh, yeah.
There's nothing.
Make fun of Fargo.
There's nothing more not nice than harming a baby because that baby is vulnerable.
But this whole viability thing, I don't know where it got created, that abortion is and I have relatives that support abortion up until viability. I'm like, why? Like, what changes in your heart that it's like, you could live on your own when we cut the cord? Well, what if nobody takes care of the baby? this is Mother Teresa's point. Like, this is what's happened to us, that we're unwilling to care for a helpless baby? I mean, so you cut the cord and the baby's viable? No, they're not. Well, they can breathe on their own. Okay.
Follow the science.
I know. Don't pick your kindergartner up from school. And when the police come to your house for child abandonment, you can say, well, they can breathe on their own.
Yeah, or bring your child home from preschool and abuse them and say it's privacy.
Yeah.
You can't come onto my property. I got substantive due process.
I cut the cord a long time ago.
Yeah.
Little punk can survive on his own. It's just such a cruel thing. And by the way, we don't really live by it all. Because in reality, you go, if we want the baby, you go, and every nurse, every doctor is just 1,000% focused on the baby and what the baby and the mother need. And the last thing they're thinking about is any harm. Harm would be the worst thing that could happen to that baby. And I do still believe in medicine in that regard, as we get further away from COVID. But our deliveries of all 8 of our kids have been wonderful, beautiful experiences with the best nurses and doctors, and some of our doctors, our friend. But just all the nurses we've had, we delivered one in Virginia. We've been at different hospitals. It's been awesome. And I know people have horror stories, but we don't. And we've done it 8 times, and it's been awesome every single time. And these are like the best people in the world. They would have done and did do for we had a couple of scares with some of our kids, and they were amazing. And they got us through it, and our babies were fine. So it's not like this. But then we pivot and we say, if we don't want the baby, viability determines your worth. And this is really relevant when it comes to Roe, because sort of the compromise on the abortion issue is either 20 weeks, 22 weeks, 24 weeks. They've moved viability over the years. One of the things that made Abby start questioning abortion. And then some pro-lifers came out and said, well, we want 15 weeks for whatever reason. Just a number, like a good round. It's just, Pat Mahomes is 15. Let's do 15. It just made no sense whatsoever. And that, I just think we get in trouble when it's not focused on what's going to close an abortion facility.
Well, a lot of this nature of Roe, and even some of the solutions, you talk about a 15-week pro-life protection, it shows the power of propaganda, because nobody was out clamoring for a right to privacy. Nobody in human history was, until they needed something to justify abortion. Nobody was clamoring for abortion until viability. Like, the regular, decent human being just doesn't strike, like, at what point do I think we should kill the baby? You're not having that conversation. Even the 15-week thing, like, there's nothing organic about this. Somebody says it, and then people repeat it as though it's based on anything when it's not, and Roe is not based on anything.
And the abortion industry's big gotcha moment for this was that violinist argument.
Yeah.
That with Judith Jarvis Thompson, which was arguing a born human being wasn't viable, and you didn't have the obligation to care for that if they're hooked up to you because they're hooked up to you, and this, that, and the other, which it's quite an interesting
it's the consistent
thought experiment.
It's the consistent point.
But by the way, YouTube, I don't know, Live Action Equal Rights Institute, they have some good quick responses to that. I think you guys address it. Do you address it in the first What to Say?
We said it's too dumb to bother really getting into detail. Because at the end of the day,
you're giving credibility to the other side.
Because
the bone marrow.
Yeah.
Same with the bone marrow. It's all nonsense.
Your baby, who is your own flesh and blood and half of your genetic code, is not, in fact, the same as the kidnapper violinist.
Can God make a rock that he cannot move? It's the circular argument. Well, no, because then the rock would be God. Like it's a supreme being. But
I didn't choose to have this baby in my womb. Just because I did the action that made it happen doesn't mean this is forced birth, Steve. This is what they call. I love Sandra Day O'Connor's notes in the Casey case. And what year is that? 92?
Yeah.
Okay. So, by the way, Sandra Day O'Connor, for our listeners, fun little tidbit about her in Mike Rowe's movie, Something to Stand For, that I will let you see to find out. But she's an interesting lady. She would reaffirm the right to abortion in Casey, but even she said the Roe framework is clearly on a collision course with itself. As medical science becomes better able to provide for the separate existence of the fetus, the point of viability is moved further back toward conception.
So basically, Roe's on a collision course with itself because of science and technology.
How about that?
And the more we see the baby, learn about the baby, know about the baby, the more it's going to be hard to kill the baby.
We quote Sandra Day O'Connor there because she's a Supreme Court justice, but like an intelligent third grader could also make that point very easily, right?
Yes.
That's what's disappointing to me in
Yes.
this. And this is why we don't address the like bone marrow thing. It's like you don't get involved with these arguments. Just kill the baby. What's wrong with killing a baby? You know, and going on offense and getting these people to say they just want to kill the baby. That's what they want to do, you know? And this Sandra Day O'Connor, didn't she go to Harvard? She went to Harvard. She went to Harvard.
It wasn't Ivy League because we had that stretch where we were pretending that the Supreme Court was a representation of America when it was all Catholics and Jews from Harvard or Yale, but I don't remember which one she was from.
Super awesome Irish name for such a lame justice. It's really a waste of a good Irish name. But she has to say this, like, I think Roe is on a collision course with itself because we're going to discover, you know, it's like, I don't know if we'll get away with executing all these Jews. I feel like pictures will be shown one day in history books and show what we did. And it's like, everybody knows that.
It's wild where you kind of like hedge your bets a little bit and then nevertheless double down on. Yeah, it's on a collision course. Ergo, will reaffirm Roe and Casey. And I know there were some different standards and legal definitions and things that were introduced. But it's like the whole thing where you like can describe the barbarity of abortion, like what it involves and the violence that it entails. And then, yeah, but nobody makes that decision without thoughtful reflection. Oh, well, you should have said that in the beginning. We wouldn't have been marching for life for the last 50 years.
Exactly. Yeah, this was the issue with the they feel pain. Well, what if we numb them?
Yeah, right.
Can we kill them?
And there were laws to that end.
Advocating and
I know.
Yeah.
I was not a fan of they feel pain. Like, you
That
don't
was-
have to feel it. We're not in the mercy killing.
that was on their defense, though, for many of them that were advocating for that, not for the purpose of pointing that out, but so much so for the purpose of educating people and making them think this
yeah.
is a human being.
No, I know. And it was like, once you bring the word pain, they feel pain, it's to tug at the emotions.
Right.
I still think it like lowers everything to like the level of, you know, what they do.
Right.
Well,
You hate
what
14-year-old rape victims?
on what basis do we support life? On what basis do we value life? Not on feelings, not on the growth as a mutual fund as you've described. Like it has an inherent value independent of it, not on what the baby will or will not accomplish someday. And I think sometimes when we talk about feeling pain or you just killed the next Beethoven, we begin to play into the hands of abortion supporters by reducing the value of life to something other than God gave it to us and it is by its nature of infinite value.
And obviously, if I'm like a political consultant messenger guy, I'm like, yeah, but Steve, we can't run around and say God gave us all value. But it is a messaging problem that viability is some credible topic that we're not talking about. Oh, could the baby live? Can it not live? It's like, what? You know, when can we have an abortion and sleep at night? I think that that's a good question. Like, when is it okay to abort the baby? If you believe it's 40 weeks, then it's 40 weeks. If you believe never, then it's never. If you believe, because you want to close a lot of abortion facilities, you say, well, this is they feel pain and abortion kind of collide, is the heartbeat bills. Like, this is where it was effective at humanizing the baby. Because you have like Democrats that are like,
Electrical cardiac activity.
But most Democrats didn't do that. They're like, in Texas, we had them vote for the heartbeat bill because they're like, I don't want to stop a heartbeat. Like, it's just awkward, you know?
Partial birth abortion was similar. It was much later in the
Yes.
pregnancy, but you saw the number of abortions in the early 90s from like 1.8 million a year down to 1.2 million, saved a lot of lives. The law itself did nothing to save any lives, but the awareness campaign that surrounded the law
Yes.
did. And I think same thing with heartbeat.
But that was a messaging thing. And I remember when he ran in 2000, abortion came up and they went to Gore. Boy, what a boring candidate. That poor guy. But I guess he was VP and they just had to do it. But I remember in Karl Rove, I read his book, and apparently he came up with this line, but right off the gate, he's like, I don't like partial birth abortion. It's a barbaric practice. And I remember thinking, that's a good, like, he's like concerned and kind of grossed out. You know, it's a barbaric practice, which it is. And you can look at the footage. It's on YouTube, but Gore looks totally uncomfortable because it's like, I got to defend that. You know, and that's what we need to do. And we frankly have a lot more material now because we have this infanticide. We have the rhetoric from abortion doctors themselves. We have, you know, all the David Daleiden stuff. But there's so much ammo, I guess, to go on offense with. And
we don't need to complicate it either. You know, you mentioned a moment ago, like we can get into the weeds here and you'll hear like, well, it's a complex issue. The messaging on abortion really isn't that complex. What we talked about just a moment ago, every life has value. That's not a complex message. Most people don't need to be convinced of that. They just simply need to be reminded of that.
Every life has value, and I'm okay with killing them, is what we hear from abortion supporters, but also the reporter that got fired recently from Vox, right? I believe, about the healthcare shooting. Which is an oxymoron. Every life has value, and I'm okay with killing certain people.
Last month,
Yeah.
the
That's
United
right.
Healthcare CEO,
Yeah.
he was gunned. Well, there were a lot of people that said a lot of dumb stuff.
Yeah.
Who wants somebody to get gunned down in New York? It's on video. Like, what is wrong? So you hate corporate America, or you hate, you know, they had all the. There was some kind of meme on either Twitter or Facebook, and it was like. What do you call it when you file an insurance claim and they won't pay it? What do you call it? Producer John?
Denial?
Yeah, like the denials of all the different insurance companies. And ranked number one was United Health. So they deny health insurance more than, and this person, I don't know who they were, but they just posted it. And all the comments were like, and your point is? So we shoot the CEO in broad daylight outside the Hilton in Midtown Manhattan? You know what I mean? It's just, a lot of people said a lot of dumb stuff, but that's just what happens. But with abortion, you know, I've had many conversations and they go through this, and this is what you can get to. This is why you don't have to get into bone marrow and is the mom going to walk around with the umbilical cord connected her whole life till the kid's a teenager? They'll come up with all this stuff. And if you just ask them, when should you not be able to get an abortion? And if they say 40 weeks, they say, okay, well, surely we can have infanticide. Yeah, okay, when can we not have infanticide? And just keep going until you're killing 16-year-olds or whatever it is. And maybe but what it ends up as is, no, abortion kills a baby and you should be able to kill a baby. And you're like, but that's wrong. And they'll say, and this has happened to me 3 times, people die every day, bro.
But that's still such an outlier position. I mean, we can talk about messaging and like when
you're saying people die every day, bro, is outlier?
Yeah, most people don't actually live by that concept.
Right.
You've got like discussions on it's too extreme. We need the proper amount of extremism, or like this could lead to some kind of slippery slope where now they're killing 2-year-olds. The whole pro-life message can be summed up in 2 sentences. The fetus or the embryo or whatever age or stage of development you want to use is a human being. Some people will agree, some people won't, but it's empirically provable with science. Step 1, it's a human being. Step 2, we should not kill innocent people, which almost everybody agrees with. The only case for abortion involves either some sort of like anti-science, well, it's not a life, it's a potential life, or yeah, we shouldn't kill people, but what about left-handed victims of climate change who are destined for a life of poverty and drug abuse?
Or it's a human being, but it's not a person.
Yeah, but that's part and parcel of the anti-scientific.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we should win the emotional arguments too. One of my frustrations during the election was that they don't have emotional arguments, so they made it up. They had that woman in Texas who was like, and we wanted the babies and we couldn't have them. And they show the high chairs. She left the state and aborted her baby and then had the high chair there. It was like, you weren't hurt because you were denied an abortion. You went and had an abortion, and now you're mourning your high chair, but the high chair's empty because you went and paid an abortion doctor to kill your baby. So they made up the emotional stories. We actually have them. We have victims of rape who chose life. We have the what we covered with the sex traffickers and the forced abortion, being able to hide the sins of the sex traffickers. There's all these emotional stories that we have that we can use, and I agree with you. I think we overuse the slippery slope, and it's too extreme, and it's too, and basically our ads look like theirs. It could be like, Bill Johnson, too extreme for Iowa. And you're like, is he for abortion or against it? You don't know.
Yeah,
it could be the same ad.
At the end of the day, if you've got two complicated cases, you're going to go with the one who no one ends up in jail because that seems mean. And, right?
Yeah.
It's mean.
True.
It's, what if they come after a woman? They didn't. But what if they do? They won't. But I saw this ad. It doesn't make any sense. It's all based on, it all comes down to a point that you've made. We can talk about logic. We can talk about science. At the end of the day, the issue is we as a society want to kill children. Why do we want to kill children? And I mean, that's where Roe came from. They wanted to kill children, so they made up a right to privacy and the implication that a right to privacy allows you to kill children. Roe could never last because it's built on a foundation of sand.
Yeah. So Blackmun's legal clerk, Edward Lazarus, we haven't said this yet, right? As a matter of constitutional interpretation and judicial method, Roe borders on the indefensible. I say this as someone utterly committed to the right to choose, as someone who loved Roe's author like a grandfather.
The grandfather who didn't abort his mother?
This is the top 5 awkward statements we've ever said on the podcast. So yeah, this is indefensible. Which explains Alito's point in the. Okay, so here's old RBG.
This is what I was thinking earlier when you said Ginsburg. I was like, notorious RBG.
Notorious RBG. She was a. I love Matt's quotes. Matt's quote on RBG was, she was everything. She was a trailblazer. She did all this, and she led the way. She was a rebel, and she was those things. The problem is she was a Supreme Court justice, and they're not supposed to be trailblazers. They're supposed to interpret the law. It was great. All right. She said, the court wrote a sweeping opinion that made every law in the country, even the most liberal, unconstitutional. She went on to say it's too far, too fast, and she critiqued emphasis on privacy.
Hey, she's starting to sound like us.
She wasn't intellectually dishonest. I think she was dishonest. She wasn't intellectually dishonest because she still obviously supported abortion, knowing it was bad law.
I don't know if we covered this one, but this is a pretty good line here. Harvard legal scholar and abortion supporter John Hart Eli said Roe is bad because it is bad constitutional law, or rather because it is not constitutional law and gives almost no sense of an obligation to try to be.
Awesome.
Ouch.
Boom.
Ouch. Yeah. Yeah, it's not bad constitutional law because it's not constitutional law at all. It's great.
None of the dissenting justices in Dobbs even tried to defend the legal merits of Roe. That's what I found interesting. Even relatives who were trying to argue did exactly what the dissenting justices did, and was like, oh yeah, but isn't it sad we had to make a law to make sure that interracial marriage wasn't banned? Like, no. Stupid. That's not at all.
But
wait, they didn't ban it? Because I was told that was about to happen.
Yeah, it's about to happen.
Who's the author of, who's the affirming opinion on here? Who are we talking about? We're talking about a man who is in an interracial marriage.
Yeah,
He's
Justice
not banning
Thomas.
this. Like,
Married to a white lady.
Give me a break.
He's
Come
going to
on.
ban himself.
Talk about deflection here.
Boy, they hate Thomas.
I
It's
know.
amazing.
And-
That from the get-go.
And yeah, I was gonna say, in the '90s, going back to his trial, what was it? His hearings to be confirmed.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh! And then he just totally dropped the race card and was like, "I'll shut them up.
Yeah,
They want to play games with me."
No other option.
That's awesome.
I love Justice Thomas. I'd love to meet him one day. We asked him to speak at the gala. He couldn't.
Oh.
But he wrote me back.
Awesome.
So it's like, it's a rejection letter, but it's cherished.
But it's
And it's got the Supreme Court logo.
We gotta
put it on the webpage.
We got a small stack of those now, don't we?
And we do. We got a lot of rejection letters. Hey, we if you come to the 40 Days for Life HQ, you'll see the Trump letters to 40 Days for Life supporting us. So anyways, we've gotten some acceptance and some rejection, but he was busy. He couldn't do it.
He and Alito, like if you wanted to make a list, like contenders for greatest living American, they'd probably both have to be on that short list of contenders. Thomas and Alito.
So Matt, who's a little bit older than us and a lawyer, obviously, he had good insight on this one time we were driving, and he said Scalia is one of the most brilliant justices in the last 100 years, and probably ever. Like top 1 or 2, Scalia. And that's like everybody. You can disagree with him, but intellectually, he was it. But yeah, that Justice Thomas was probably the best Supreme Court justice we've ever had. Is just moral and good and never compromised, wanted to do the 14th Amendment, and just ban abortion altogether. All that good stuff.
Have you ever seen the bar graph where it shows how much time the justices spend speaking during oral arguments during a term?
No.
It's like Ketanji Brown Jackson way up here, and then all the rest are kind of here, and then Justice Thomas says almost nothing.
Yeah, he
just reads the briefs, listens to the arguments, and then makes the most brilliant case you can make for his decision.
My not so hot take is that he will definitely retire in the next 18 months or 2 years.
As much as I hate to lose him, I hope he does that.
Well, he'll do it because he is a team player, and he also, I've never met him. I don't know him. I know people who do know him, but like, he just seems like the guy that's totally fine with going to his cabin somewhere in the woods and hunting and never seeing Washington, D.C. ever again.
Yeah. What else does he have to prove at this point, too?
Yeah. I mean, Ginsburg, God rest her soul. I mean, she's doing like videos of her planking and all that, which no one needs to see. And, just, it was like, you're now like a celebrity. She had a movie made about her. And that's fine. That was her personality. But he seems like the opposite. Like, do I have to go to the lunch with everybody? Yes. We said we'd do that every Wednesday, just so, I don't know. And I know he's a funny guy and he's got a great sense of humor. And I've seen him interviewed on EWTN, but he doesn't seem like the spotlight person. He didn't even want to come to our gala. So to his credit.
One last note about the justices in the dissent of Dobbs not even mentioning the legal basis for Roe. Things that they did mention, we talked about interracial marriage, same-sex marriage, contraception, and I had to actually look this up when we wrote the book. It's not a board game because there's no board, but the tabletop game Jenga, all mentioned there, but no legal defense of Roe.
Interesting.
This is a big point for the listener and the viewer to harness, because you just have to say, what did they say in the dissent? Like, how awful. 50 years of precedent, they overturned Roe. What was the legal argument against doing this? And there wasn't one.
Crickets.
And honest and intelligent liberals hammered the liberal justices for their horrible dissents. But what were they supposed to do?
No, they've got nothing. This is the case where sometimes you don't have to be the best debater, but when you're arguing on the side of truth, you look like a pretty smart debater. Which
we have said many times on the podcast, some of the best legal documents in our country's recent history are the dissents for the gay marriage decision. Mm-hmm. Alito's and Scalia, if you want to learn about the Constitution, because that was the opposite. They just invented gay marriage out of thin air. And Scalia, it was the only time all the conservatives wrote a dissent. Usually just one does. All of them wrote it. Alito's is bad to the bone. Scalia's is hysterical. He's not being sarcastic, but he's quoting the liberal justices. He's actually quoting the document. And there's one sentence where he quotes this long, I think it's from Sotomayor or something. She goes on some long thing and you don't know. It's like Kamala. You have no idea what she's saying. And at the end, in his dissent, Scalia wrote, "Huh?" with a question mark. Like, it's funny. It's on the internet. It's not too long to read, but those two are just awesome. And you see how it plays out, particularly Alito's predictions. Okay. Number 3. This is the third point on Roe is not viable. Overturning Roe was a generational step forward for empowering women.
I do feel more empowered.
You should.
I identify as a woman, so there you go.
That's good. You didn't always do that. I remember back in the day. But the Dobbs dissent, it demonstrates sort of a bleak view of women, that women need abortion, they want abortion, it's all they live for. They're not a real woman unless they get an abortion or have access to it.
But the crazy thing is that this is always equated to something like voting. Like, I should be able to have an abortion, like I should have a right to vote.
Right, but here's the thing. That's a great analogy, but half the women in our country don't believe that women shouldn't vote.
Yeah, right.
Follow that? Like
Did
they're always
everybody
like,
else follow that?
this is just like women voting. And you're like, no, but the majority of the pro-life movement are women.
Yes, correct.
And they believe, you know what I mean?
There was how many double, triple negatives in that one, Steve?
I try to load them up sometimes.
No, you're right. And that's the thing is it's kind of like saying, well, you're not, I don't really hear so much you're not a real woman if you are against abortion, like you do if you don't vote a certain way, then you're not black. Like if you're a black person, you don't vote
according
a
to
certain
Biden,
way, you're not black. Like I don't hear that so much about women, but it's heavily implied. And I don't say that about progressive pro-abortion women. Like if you don't believe abortion is wrong, you're not a woman.
right?
Like that's not a real thought I've ever had. I believe you're very misinformed and you're in a lot of pain and you know what happened and what it is and you're just in a lot of denial and you have to justify it. But it's these bizarre takes that were mainstream media, or I shouldn't say mainstream, what do we call it now? The big, what do we call it? There's a new name for it.
The
every
legacy
week.
media?
Legacy media. There we
Legacy
go.
media.
Legacy media. Because there's a lot of great mainstream media out there, apparently. What the legacy media says that we should think or feel about this.
Well, we've got this quotation from the Dobbs dissent. The expectation of reproductive control is integral to many women's identity.
Ugh.
I think like of all the answers to Matt Walsh's question, what is a woman? To insist that it's crushed skulls and severed limbs is the bleakest of all possible answers to that question.
It's so true. It's absolutely true.
Yeah.
It's totally crazy.
That's our way to define our femininity, yeah. Because we never talk about that, though. That's a good sign to me that they still don't want to talk about what abortion is. They still, as shout your abortion as we are now, and abortion's a good thing, and safe, legal, and rare is gone, but free, accessible, on demand is the new thing now. I'm still not seeing yes, we love, not as much, you do on the fringe, but not in the legacy media.
But that's because this is the death of the feminist movement. Because the whole idea with the feminist movement is it was all about them, and you would just never get to the baby. It was about women's rights.
Yeah.
And the baby crept in, as Sandra Day O'Connor predicted, through science, through technology, through natural law. And people were like, quiet down, feminists. Let's hear this part of the argument. And that's why you saw people start becoming pro-life in the 80s and 90s, and certainly now. The other complete death of the feminist movement was the transgender people. That's just the end of it. The Women of the Year.
The movement, yeah.
Has a thing. And they,
Sport. What kind of thing?
I think I've said, we've said things on the podcast before, but yeah, it's a dude.
Trying to avoid being like the sixth straight podcast with a language disclaimer.
That's right. But it's a dude that wins Women of the Year. It's a dude that wins the women's sport. So everybody's like, the feminists are a joke. They're washed up. They're old. Nobody cares what they have to say, and they've been overtaken.
Right? Didn't Miss Universe 2 years ago? Wasn't it a dude?
Yes, but who was the lady that won this year? A couple of months ago.
Swedish. I don't know her name. A Swedish blonde.
Beautiful Swedish woman.
Actual woman.
Right, and it was like okay. Important. Yeah, it's like back to normal.
Yeah.
Apparently, I think we covered this maybe in the Pride Month podcast way back when we saw the Pride Month take a dip, and we'll be doing that in a couple of months. We'll be observing that. But part of the news cycle was that the CEO of Victoria's Secret, who decided to do like the trans models and all this stuff, Apparently he got fired by the board of directors, and the new guy was like, and we will be now having hot chicks, and it was just like back to
we're still going to sin, but we're at least
still
going to do it right.
exploit women. We're still going to, yeah. But I mean, we're at least not going to make people uncomfortable. So it was really kind of funny how that stuff just, it runs its course, and I don't know. That's why this quote about, all of a sudden it's about women, and it's like, no, it never was.
And you're absolutely right. This is one of the points I always love to make as to, it's just such a basic argument against abortion. It's so good, but there's nothing progressive, there's nothing empowering about pitting women against their children. And that's what we do all the time. Children are parasites. Just because I consented to sex doesn't mean I consented to a baby, which there's a clear lack of understanding of cause and effect
Right.
here. Real progress.
I jumped off the cliff, but I in no way consented to crashing to the bottom of the canyon.
Exactly. That if only that worked. I consented to, what was the one you used that was really good, Sean? Eating, 25 cupcakes, but I didn't consent to getting fat. What's up?
Yes,
with that?
that's
It's like so.
definitely sounds like an analogy I would use.
Oh my gosh. Real progress means empowering both, which makes scrapping Roe a monumental step forward. So, for all those pro-lifers who are feeling down and have wondered if that was a mistake and we should go back to that, please stop. That's the devil talking.
Well, to point out the obvious, there's nothing progressive about pitting moms against their babies. And this is
Yes.
probably the saddest point of this, not just that the cultural and social expectation that children are a burden, that mental divorce
Yeah.
would turn into physical divorce that required violence.
Yep.
And that's very dangerous. And frankly, we see that in other genocides and Holocausts. You know who the problem is? It's the Jews.
Yeah.
And all of that, I'd hate to just use like a cliche because there's so many people now that openly hate Jews, but that's how it starts, where there's kind of a thing and you complain about it and then it grows and then it's a real problem and then it's what ruined your life and then it's something that absolutely has to go. And you have an abortion, you have a Holocaust, you have whatever it is. But it starts with the, they're the problem. And that's detached from science and reality. This is why the Trump-Hitler thing didn't work. It was separated from reality. You're like, but he's not going to round up reporters and put them in a camp. Who was that lady that said, I'll be in a camp for sure? And the guy in MSNBC was like, pardon? It's just crazy.
It's an interesting thing how the rhetoric will go, not just on abortion, but on all political matters, because it can't get any more extreme. Everything is now you're in a camp or people will die, and there's nowhere else to go. And now that those two arguments have failed definitively.
And the problem is we're in that world. Yes, they put people in camps and they killed them. And we're like, yes, abortion is a Holocaust and a genocide. And so now everything is like the cops stopped me and gave me a traffic ticket because I was speeding. I'll probably end up in a camp someday. And this is why this is the problem with race, and this is the problem with overusing certain injustices that don't apply. Ours applies because people actually die in abortion and people have died in other Holocausts or have been dehumanized under the law, like the slaves. And it's a perfect analogy for this. But when you wear it out and you say that Trump is Hitler and he's going to, I don't even know who he's going to kill besides the reporters. That was the main thing. Talk about self-absorption. I'll probably be locked up. When you weren't those first 4 years, it's just exhausting. Do you want to quote the great cardinal? The late great
Cardinal Joseph Vincenti. I love to quote this from time to time. I read this every time we've been blessed to bring a new baby into the world. The most monumental person on earth is a mother. She cannot claim the honor of having built Notre Dame Cathedral. She need not. She has built something more magnificent, a dwelling for an immortal soul. The angels have not been blessed with such a grace. They cannot share in God's creative miracle to bring new saints to heaven. Only a human mother can. Mothers are closer to God the Creator than any other creature. What on God's good earth is more glorious than this? To be a mother.
that's
what a misogynist.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's what that actually implies.
It's awesome.
That's beautiful. That's really beautiful. And it's beautiful that you read it when y'all have a new baby. Oh.
So, getting ahead of
Heather's
ourselves.
praising me. Don't interrupt her.
This is a time to shut your mouth.
Sorry, go ahead, Sean.
Dad, I wish you would just shut your big yapper. Gotta run out. Put this on a plaque, guys, for Mother's Day. Give it to your wife.
Yes.
Boom.
There you go.
Okay.
No, that's helps me when Mother Day is going to come up eventually.
Oh, that's
Exactly.
right. That's
Be
right.
prepared this year. Thank you, Sean.
You're
That's
the
right.
earliest
Interrupt Heather anytime you want.
prepared.
You want a similar one about dads? Nah, smoker will do. Okay, as we wrap up. Okay, making abortion the default response to a crisis pregnancy.
Disincentivizes.
Disincentivizes
You can do it.
finding solutions. So this is wonderful Attorney General Lynn Fitch. They offer no positive director for the woman, she said of the abortion industry.
Sorry, that's a typo on my part. They offer no positive direction.
For the woman. But like, she's saying that about the abortion industry, which is just great. It's like, I said this once and people were like, we're outraged. But I was like, every Planned Parenthood in America could close today. We're trying to get that done through defunding them, or at least taking a step towards that. Every Planned Parenthood could close and it would do no harm. And that's 100% true. We don't need them.
Right.
Okay? Especially, first off, we've done this. They don't offer anything. They don't do mammograms. All that. But there are, all of these community clinics that outnumber them so much. But the pregnancy resource centers outnumber them 5-1. They don't do anything. They only do harm. They only create anxiety.
So you have the abortion and the woman escapes poverty? No, she's still poor. So you have the abortion and the woman's relationship problems go away? No, almost all relationships end after all of the problems that abortion is meant to solve remain after the abortion.
That's something that's I've always loved pointing out. I remember I pointed this out to a Planned Parenthood intern one time who came up to me on the street and was trying to tell me how great Planned Parenthood was. Didn't know anything about my views or that I knew anything about Planned Parenthood. But when you look at the statistics, and I know the Charlotte Lozier Institute has a great map on their website that points out the federally qualified healthcare centers in the nation and then the number of Planned Parenthoods. And they outnumber Planned Parenthood significantly. It used to be 12-1. I think it's 8-1 now. And if you take that and you put it next to, according to Planned Parenthood's annual report, the number of patients they serve every year, and it's like, 1 million something, and then you divide that out, if every Planned Parenthood closed, it was something to the effect of each FQHC would get an additional 9 patients a year.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh no, what are we going to do without Planned Parenthood?
Right. It's a great stat, though.
Wow.
It's like, they're going to be overwhelmed. They can't handle it. It's like, it's 9 people.
Yeah, it was crazy.
The other thing is, if you run a thought experiment, let's say there is no abortion, Planned Parenthood is gone, as you just described a moment ago. What does that look like? We kind of have it's no longer hypothetical because we have an entire region of the country where abortion is either not allowed or it's very, very restricted. So are women dying? No. Are they going to prison? No. What is happening? The same thing that's happened for decades. Pro-life Christians are rolling up their sleeves, they're getting to work, and they're meeting the needs.
Also, the birth rate's going up because
there's some evidence for you.
When you don't kill people, they continue to live.
Yeah, how about that?
How's that for your bone marrow argument?
It's science.
It's science.
But we always could be doing better as Christians.
We could always be doing better.
Let's strive to do that.
And I think now that we're making New Year's resolutions, that is January 21st when this podcast comes out. Steve's not allowed. No soup for you. But we do need to make those resolutions to this year do more than ever. And for sure, we had our webcast, sign the petition, defund Planned Parenthood. Go to defundplannedparenthood.com. You can sign that petition, share it with your friends, share that webcast that we did. But this is the chance to do it. And we may not get another chance. I don't think that we will, because if they get away with not doing it this cycle, they have 18 months essentially. If they don't do it now, I don't know. It's pretty tough. Here's the other thing, and I'll say this openly. Alexis McGill Johnson is an ineffective leader. Okay?
Current president of
Current
Planned
president
Parenthood,
of
as of recording of this podcast.
Current CEO. Maybe she's gotten fired in the meantime. They should fire her. But she's not going to be CEO forever. And there's always right now they're low energy, morale is very low. We've talked a lot about that. We discussed it on the webcast, the Defund Planned Parenthood webcast. Morale's low, turnover's low, having all sorts of employee issues and unions and all this stuff. It's really bad. They're unionizing. It's a mess. And they are ripe for a new, fresh, young CEO to come in and spark energy into Planned Parenthood and make it harder to defund them, And so, because I don't think a lot of Republicans do want to defund them. Some probably don't, or kind of want to. And if they get a charismatic leader in there that kind of re-energizes it, if they had Cecile Richards from 20 years ago, be tough, be real tough. But right now, she's not talented, and she's an ineffective leader and has been since she took over, and she got worse when they overturned Roe.
But the bench is empty. They hired her as the interim, did a big search, and were like, I guess we could just stick with her.
Oh, that's.
I don't understand that either. I don't see how. I don't see how Hillary Clinton's not the president of Planned Parenthood.
It's not like she came in to
She's white.
They fired the NFL coach, and then they rattle off 6 straight wins and made the playoffs. They're like, okay, I guess we'll hire the guy. She took over a sinking ship. It continued to sink, and they're like, I guess it's the best we can do. I don't think they have anybody else. Yeah, I made a football analogy. I went there.
Mama was always good at explaining things I could understand. But, yeah, it's so true, because that's just kind of, this is the timing. This is when we do this. And the listener, the viewer, you, wherever you are, you will see changes in your neighborhood, no matter what state you're in. If you have a Planned Parenthood, you're going to see them dump some real estate. You're going to see them make some serious changes. This is a third of their income. Everybody thinks it's like 2%, 5%. Oh, it'll hurt them. But no, this is devastating to them, and they are not in good shape. So go to defundplannedparenthood.com.
The other thing, let's say we're wrong and we're just too pessimistic and we don't do it now, but we do it in 8 years. Those 8 years are minimum of $6-7 billion of funding over the next few years, 2 million more abortions. So I think this is our shot. But even if we get another shot, why wait? Do it now.
Right.
Why wait? And also, I don't know, why in 8 years would it happen? I mean, we have a different, every 4 years, it's going to get better or worse depending on where you are. But the kind of Republicans we're getting are going to be different. Trump changed politics forever since 2016, and for the better, I think. Basically, you can be yourself, which isn't always good with him, but it makes other people be like, I don't have to walk on eggshells. I can it doesn't mean you run around call everybody names.
Mitt Romney is not coming back.
Mitt Romney's gone. He is gone. He's like a robot, right? And he's done. That's a great point. So that whole thing of there's, you have one little piece of dirt on your shoes, it's the end of the world. That's all gone. You don't have to walk on eggshells. But it can go two ways. The moderate, liberal, certainly Republican congressmen and women and senators from pro-life states get more pro-life. But the liberal, moderate Republican, leftist Democrats and Republicans in blue states get more pro-abortion because they feel like they got to go home and win. And that's going to be a struggle. And I just think that, you're going to see compromise on both sides, because you're going to have Democrats that say, I'm in South Carolina. It's abortion free. I'm not voting for your 40-week abortion bill. I'm not voting for you to fund Planned Parenthood. They don't even want Planned Parenthood in my state. We outlawed abortion. And that's a Democrat. And you could also have Republicans in, Washington State or whatever that are like, I don't know. I don't know why I need to be pro-life. So I just think we need to do it because it's the perfect timing. And if we wait, we just risk it.
Mm-hmm.
So
Hey, Planned Parenthood, go fund yourself.
Go fund yourself. That's fun. That's a good T-shirt. Is that a thing?
It's a
I need to get
thing.
One of those. I like those. Go fund yourself.
With that.
Yeah, with that. Yeah. So yeah, it's a great opportunity. And by the way, if they don't get funded, or if they don't get defunded, we'll still be here. We'll still be going. Either way, 40 Days for Life keeps moving forward to close more abortion facilities until they're all closed. But that would certainly be a key part. And
Yes.
fiscally alone, if you're just going to do it that way, it's a waste of money. So. All right. Well, thank you. Please go to the website, defundplannedparenthood.com, sign the petition. You can watch our webcast. We give 5 things you can do the first 100 days of 2025 to help end abortion and defund Planned Parenthood. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Heather. Be sure to rate, review, and share this podcast, and we will see you next time. God bless you.